Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoopsie Radio Network, and welcome to the Drafting the Circus program. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about this past week in racing. Joining me are my two good friends, Torres and Richard Youden. Fellas, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. You, Louise?
Frantic days and editing and etc. But Portland's coming up, so all is right in the world.
Right, and you were at Portland for the Indycar testing, so we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. Talk about some of the sights and sounds from the test out there. Indycar also was tested in Laguna Seca very recently as well in anticipation of the last two races there. But Indycar overall had the weekend off, but there were two pretty big races at two of the most famous racetracks in the world, one being Spa and the other being Daytona. So let's start with Daytona. It was the final race of the NASCAR Cup season. The regular season champion is Chase Elliott. That was decided going in. But we went in with two playoff spots available. And, well, we had one playoff spot available. Then Kurt Busch is still recovering from concussion syndrome symptoms. So he pulled his request for a medical waiver. He's not going to be able to start the playoffs. He's still not fully recovered, and we do wish Kurt the best, but that opened up two spots. And so the two guys points-wise who were above the cut line was Blaney and Truex. And obviously, if somebody were to win that race that had enough points, they could grab a spot and knock one of those guys out. So, rained out on Saturday. So the race moved to Sunday morning, Sunday 10 a.m., which drew the ire of some folks. That's why I don't know. That race traditionally was held at 10 a.m. in the past, but it was on the 4th of July. It wasn't on a Sunday, so I guess somebody was upset they were going to miss church. But either way, we did get an early start to the race, and it was a sloppy race overall. Louise, you get a chance to kind of see some of the carnage?
I want to say sloppy. It was appalling in the final 20 laps. And you could thank Mother Nature for Cody Ware getting a top 10 in the Cup Series, because I don't know how they decide things officiating wise when it comes to weather, but you already had a blunder in Loudon in 2021 when it rained basically for 8 laps and waited until all the JGR cars wadded them up at turn number 1. And if you look at the replay coming to 23 laps to go, it was looking like it was going to be a mighty race. Maybe everybody would use their heads, fingers crossed, hopefully, like they did in February, where it says, yeah, you had a couple minor multi-car incidents, but everything else went seamless. And then rain in turn 1, and then imagine the Xbox controller disconnecting, or an online lobby in a NASCAR game. As soon as the rain happened, boom, all of them snapped out of control, and basically everybody not named Austin Dillon, Austin Cindric, Cody Ware, Landon Castle, BJ McLeod were all wrecked. They just wrecked because of utter incompetence at the end of the day. That's on the officiating. That's all on the officials. That's all up in the tower for not, the danger of going. Imagine, at Loudon, it's about 130, 150 miles an hour. You're talking about Daytona, highly banked, 180 miles an hour. With these cars, imagine if it was last year when they were going about 205. This is what happens when you run in the rain and now just throwing a yellow, because you saw in the lens before they wadded them up. They all wrecked.
Yeah, but I mean, didn't the rain just kind of pop up out of nowhere? I mean,
it was building up a bit.
Yeah, I just wonder if they didn't have time to get the caution out before it just kind of just.
Yeah, talking to people that were there, and from the people I was talking to, they obviously have a very biased view, or potentially could have a very biased view of this and the outcome to the race. But the general consensus is that NASCAR couldn't have predicted that rain, and it was, if they start throwing yellow flags because there could be rain, some races will finish, it'll never get to its completion. So, yeah, I think it was a victim of circumstance, and of course, when there's rain in the air, what happens? Guys start to push harder, and the racing gets more hectic and frantic, especially at super speedways where you can make moves that you wouldn't be able to make on a mile and a half or a road course, for example. So I think NASCAR are in a very, very difficult position. But they probably made the right call to not preemptively. What happens if they'd waved the yellow and then it stayed dry? It would
I
look
mean, they kind of
stupid.
did that they did that at the Daytona road course, a little bit of rain, and then nothing really much happened of it, and people were upset about that. But when you hear the
Yeah,
drivers getting so frustrated about it, then it makes you wonder.
yeah, but the drivers are always going to be frustrated, aren't they? I bet Austin Dillon doesn't mind. You know,
No, no, not at all. No. So I yeah, I guess we
you've
should.
always
Yeah,
got two
I
sides to
guess,
every story, unfortunately.
I guess we should mention it was Austin Dillon who did hang on for the victory after he kind of dumped Austin Cindric out of his way just a little bit, just a
Imagine
little,
that.
just a little bit, and took that last playoff spot. But Blaney and Truex both ran into trouble during the race. I was other than the massive pileup with 20 to go, there were several multi-car incidents throughout that race there, and Blaney was caught up in one of the very early ones. Got some damage to his car, went 3 laps down, and then Truex was involved in one later. And Truex had actually raced himself to within being about 10 points of overtaking Blaney till he got caught up in somebody else's wreck. So Blaney did manage to sneak into the playoffs, but
Hmm.
Truex will be on the outside looking in.
And
You know,
if they'd actually called the race when that big wreck happened, if they'd said, right, okay, with 20 laps to go, it's raining, we're gonna, just declare the victory, then Truex would have made it through. It was the restart and the fact that that allowed Blaney to catch up their spots there, and because so many other cars were out, that elevated Blaney through the standings quite significantly.
oh yeah, absolutely. There were probably a good 15, 20 cars that didn't return for the restart.
What did Justin Marks say about $4 million worth of damage in total?
It was ugly, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but so the playoff field is as such. Starting at the top is Chase Elliott, and then we've got Joey Logano, Ross Chastain, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Tyler Reddick, Kevin Harvick, Christopher Bell, Kyle Busch, Chase Briscoe, Daniel Suarez, Austin Cindric, Alex Bowman, and then in the 16th spot, Austin Dillon. So as we head on to the playoffs, those are the 16 that have a shot at this championship. Obviously, points wise, points are reset. It's
Not quite though, is it? I mean, they still do take. So Chase is almost guaranteed to get through the first,
sure,
at
yeah,
least
yeah,
the
yeah.
first
So it's like
two.
20,
So it
20.
doesn't quite it doesn't
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
reset the points.
they used to reset everybody to even. Now they reset them all to interval. So it's 2040, 2025, 2020, 2019, 2014,
Yeah.
13. Yeah, so
And Chase got quite a big, he got like 15 bonus points for winning the championship, and it basically goes on how many stages you won and how many races you won as well, doesn't it? I think.
yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, you got race wins, poles, and stage wins, I think. Well, I think poles don't count, but
Poles don't count. It's race wins, stage wins, and then Chase gets like 15
right.
bonus points, which I think he'd have to have a pretty catastrophic first 6 races not to get to the final 8.
And Chase has been on his A game pretty much all year. He's been the most consistent driver all year long.
Solid, doesn't
So
he? Yeah.
yeah, he looks pretty good going into the playoffs here. Some of these other cats look really good going into playoffs too.
Right.
Yeah,
So
and I still stand the biggest mystery going into this play as how is Trackhouse again, because the biggest central problem I've had with the team has had is having both of them have solid results. Chastain has been strong, but the question remains, will he make it out? Because he's got a lot of angry drivers behind him. And will Suarez have more consistency in having the runs like Chastain has? And that's the thing. They got to be more consistent if to really be a threat to Chase Elliott and anybody else that will step up their game late in the season.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, you've got guys in here that are in there because they've won races that were significantly behind other guys in points, but because of the race when they're in there, and that's the format. So, but yeah, you got some guys in there like Austin Cindric. Certainly, he set he won the Daytona 500, but he's not really set the world on fire ever since, except for the couple of nice road course performances. But overall, he was languishing farther back in the points. You've got again to your point, Suarez. Got the one win there, but he hasn't. He's been rather inconsistent throughout the year. Chastain's won a couple races this year. Blaney's been rather consistent all year, although he hasn't won a race.
Yeah.
But some of the guys you got to watch out for are the ones that really know how to come alive when the pressure's on. And I'm talking like your Harvick, Logano certainly is going to be strong in the playoffs. Kyle Busch, obviously, and Kyle, a lot of talk about his contract talks, and I'm really not sure how that's going, but Toyota's desperately trying to keep him in the Toyota camp. But the odd thing is, right? So if they can't find sponsorship for him, right? Are they going to park the 18 for the year, or will they just find somebody to drive that they can pay significantly less? I would imagine, right?
Yeah, and I think ultimately you also got to keep an eye on that 45 team because of Kurt's condition, whether it's season or longer, that's gonna be a huge mystery as well. Because right now it boils the 18 to 45 for temporarily the 45. Who knows? Fingers crossed that's not the case for Kurt. That what happened at Pocono is the signifies the end of his career. And on top,
I would certainly hate to see him go out that way. But at this stage, he really has nothing to gain by kind of rejoined for some of these last races of the season since he's forfeited his spot in the playoff. He might as well just take the time to make sure he's healed fully and recovered.
yeah,
That's just my thought. I'm not a doctor or anything, but yeah, these kind of things are serious. I mean, these are the things that ended the careers of guys like Dario Franchitti and Dale Earnhardt Jr.
yeah, there's a lot of drivers' careers that ended that way, and it's just a matter of how that's going to incorporate. And it also boils down whether or not they want to move Ty up a year early or keep him for one more year in Xfinity, because that's a huge question mark. Is that as where does Ty go in 2023? Because Ty has been publicly known as not a guy to announce anything until the season upcoming. So we won't know Ty's 2023 plans until probably late January. That's because that's how Ty has been so far in his racing career, dating back to ARCA.
I would imagine that the decision on him is going to be directly related to his performance over the next several races in the 45. And I think if he does well and proves to be a contender, I don't think there's any sense in sending him back to Xfinity for a year. But if he struggles, he is rather young, so that'll be that's a work in progress to keep your eyes on. We've seen guys that seem to have been pushed into the Cup Series a little too soon, and we've also seen guys languish in Xfinity much longer than they needed to. So
Yeah. And some of them just don't end up getting the grand opportunity like they should. Because you have guys like in the past, like Jason Leffler, Casey Atwood, Ryan Truex, all thrusted into the top level way too soon for their bargain. And then you have guys like Justin Allgaier, who's been doing Xfinity for many years, but the opportunity may never come for him to get back to the top level in a good solid equipment. You don't see your Alex Bowman's out there where the loan bill will be worthwhile.
right, yeah. So, but yeah, that'll be interesting to see. But the whole Kyle Busch situation is interesting because there's been a lot of kind of rumblings that he's been talking with Colleague Racing. There's been a few rumblings that he's been talking with Richard Childress. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Obviously, Gibbs would love to keep him there. I mean, I would love to keep him if he worked for me because the guy can certainly wheel a car. But yeah, we'll just have to see how that plays out because I can't imagine a guy of his stature taking a huge pay cut if there's a better offer on the table.
Yeah, and at this point, like if he were to venture off of NASCAR, where would he go? Because I know there's this one video out there that suggests he should go to IndyCar, and I say to myself, what team is out there that will match his
Mm.
caliber? Not many. Ganassi is like hum ho about Palou, whether or not McLaren is a hot mess to begin with. The only ones I saw realistically is maybe Foyt or Rahal, and it just boils down to what Foyt brings to the table, and also with Rahal, which I think you could say Hy-Vee could play a role in that. But that's all mishwash at this point. I think Kyle Busch will probably stick around in NASCAR for a few more years. I don't see him trying to probably go dive in IndyCar full time, even if he remotely be interested in going. I think his mindset is still be at the top level NASCAR, and he knows he can get it done. It's just a matter of who will pay the money to bring him out there. But my biggest concern when you look down at the playoff roster is William Byron. Started off strong. As of late, he's just been completely MIA in my book. And I said early in the year, the way they will polish their mistakes from last year, because I still stand that Byron has performed better than Bowman. Yeah, Bowman had 4 wins last year, but Byron was more stronger and Essence just didn't have the wins to really back it up like he did, like Bowman did. And it looked like at the beginning of the year, Byron was on his way to maybe be a dark horse contender for a championship for spot. I'm struggling to see Byron to even make it out of the first round at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting that what I've noticed that it seems like this year as opposed to last year, there's more of a gap between the Hendrick cars of Elliott and Larson back to Byron and Bowman than there was last year. It seemed like they were all four more evenly matched last year, but it just appears to me. I don't that's not coming from any deep dive into stats or anything like that, but it seems like um those two guys are just languishing a little behind. I don't know if it's equipment or if it's talent, but there seems to be a bigger gap this year between the those
All of
two sets
all
of
of
two
them
cars. Yeah,
are.
yeah.
All of them are. It's not like last year where it was like Larson number one, Elliott two, not that were pretty relatively close. There's a huge gap from Elliott has a pretty significant gap over Larson. And then further back you have Bowman and Byron. Bowman and Byron have been completely MIA way too much to the point it's like makes you wonder what's going on with those two teams. And now we know that Greg Ives is going to be stepping down from the pit box in 2023. Whether or not it's telling to anything with those what we talked about Kyle Busch, I doubt it. But for Ives to kind of call it a career, spend time with his family, it makes you think a bit. But it's probably reading too much into it to be honest with you. But it's going to be a huge mystery of who they're going to pair with Bowman and what Bowman's future looks like as well.
Yeah, yeah, he's gonna definitely need a strong guy on his pit box, but I'm sure they've got guys in the fold that are ready to step up. But I just I don't have any names. So
Yeah, it's just a matter if they can if the chemistry and meshing well works because we've seen it many a times with Hendrick Motorsports, right? If they put a driver cruisy combo, it either clicks really well or it doesn't right out of the gate.
right, right. So what are the first three playoff races?
Darlington, I know the cutoff races at Bristol. The second one is a complete blank for me right now.
I don't know why I can't think of it either.
It's not Richmond because it got swapped out of the playoffs into the regular season.
Is
But
it
I know Darlington is this week. That and the
right?
cutoff race is Bristol.
This is quite true. Yeah, Darlington is going to be traditional Labor Day weekend date.
Kansas.
I was thinking Kansas. I just didn't want to say it out loud.
Yeah, Kansas and
till I
Homestead
looked it up.
and Richmond swapped all together. That's
Yeah.
what makes it very convoluted because now Homestead is in the cutoff in the round of 8 where Kansas used to be. Now they swapped up where it's just this one is an odd play. It's an odd scheduling with the playoffs. It's a radical change, just to be honest.
Right. So we've got three pretty different tracks. Darlington is very unique in and of itself. Kansas is one of the cookie cutters, 1.5 miles, and then of course Bristol being the tiny concrete, sometimes dirt, but concrete for this upcoming race. Yeah, we could see definitely there's guys that are strong at all those tracks. There's guys that are strong at a portion of those tracks. So I guess the real challenge for us is to try to maybe predict the first four guys out.
My mind is still on Byron, but first four out, I have Briscoe, Byron for sure. I think Cindric is just gonna miss out,
I was thinking Cindric, yeah.
and I'm gonna go Christopher Bell.
Yeah.
So I said, oh wait, the reason why, oh yeah, now I remember. The reason why I don't have Austin Dillon out of the first round because he's typically shown case he can be pretty good in the first round of the playoffs. And Darlington is one of their more stronger tracks, so I could see Dillon making it past the first round.
Okay, all right, but I'm gonna say Dillon's out in the first round, just because other than this race at Daytona, he really hasn't set the world on fire this year. And I'm gonna say Cindric, much as I love the kid, he's probably out in the first round. Chase Briscoe, I think, is out, as well as our friend Alex Bowman. That's my prediction there. And Richard, you'll abstain, right?
Yeah, we'll leave that one
Yes.
where it is.
All right, leave that one where it is. So, Louise, who do you like for Darlington then? You think it's going to be one of our 16, or somebody going to come up and steal a win?
I think it's definitely going to come for the six out of the 16. And from the top of my head, honestly, you can never count out Denny Hamlin at Darlington.
This is quite true. Yeah. Yeah. Denny's so overdue for a championship, right? And I'm not really a huge Denny Hamlin fan, but honestly, the guy's stats, the fact, I mean, he's your modern day Mark Martin. You know what I mean? He's got all the race wins and just hasn't been able to put a championship season together. So yeah, I like Hamlin for Darlington as well. I also like Chase Elliott. So I just think he's going to start the playoffs strong, and I think you're just going to have to watch Chase through the whole playoff picture.
For sure. I'm blanking out if Elliott has ever won a cup race at Darlington. He did in Xfinity when it was known as Nationwide in 14. He's been close. He's had a couple moments where he probably could have been in the mix, but stuff have happened. I look back to when he and Truex were battling for the win, and they collided in turn one in a couple of Southern 500s ago.
Yeah, that'd be funny if Truex wins. Be like poetic justice. Can't win a race till the playoff starts, and then there you go.
So... And then he'll have like a Tony Stewart 2006 run where he gets like all of his wins in the playoffs despite not making it.
Despite not being in the playoffs. Yeah. So, but yeah, Truex must be pretty disappointed because he really, really races hard out to try to get those points away from Blaney, and it just all the sloppiness, all the wrecks in that race kind of just didn't go his way. So and Truex is a guy who's been kind of on the fence about his future lately too. He's kind of on and off, mumbling maybe retirement, maybe not. See how it goes this year. So
we know he's coming back next year.
Right. Yeah. Yes. But beyond that, you know what I mean? If he were to call it a career and hang it up, he'd have nothing to be ashamed of, So
no, he's got a cup championship.
Yeah.
He's been probably one of the more stronger playoff era drivers. We're counting since it was an elimination style of playoffs.
3 runner-up positions in the last 4 years, I think it is. So
yeah,
he's
been. So. And he's had a nice long career. I mean, it's like you think about it, he's been around since what 2004, 3 or 4, yeah, right.
So when he made his debut with DEI,
yeah. And even when I go back to Atlanta 04, when he made his cup debut in the fall, they already even established then he was going to run a limited schedule in 05 before going full time in 06. So they already had a game plan. And to think that he's come a long way. He's only one of only two Cup drivers to win a championship from the Northeast, with the other being Bill Rexford in 1950 being a New Yorker, Truex being from New Jersey. And at the end of the day, for Truex, this is the first time he's missed the playoffs since 2014 when it was his first year at Furniture Row. When he had that disastrous debut year with the 78 team, because good grief, that was just a disastrous looking back. And it's also got to be gut punching that he's the only Gibbs car not in the playoffs too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but like I say, he's been a regular fixture in the Final Four for a couple of seasons here. So it's gonna be weird not having Truex part of the championship mix there. But is what it is. You know what I mean? He his efforts were too little, too late to get in. So I feel for the guy, but everybody else earned their spot.
Yeah, that's just the nature of the beast with this system. And the fact, I think at this point, Truex was even lucky to even be in the mix, considering we didn't know until days before the race that Kurt was going to withdraw his playoff eligibility. But with Dillon's win, we now have 16 winners, albeit 15 qualified for the playoffs with Kurt's withdrawal.
Yes, we do have 16 winners, right? But Blaney is in the playoffs and Kurt is not. Yep. So there you go. 16, and is that the record? 16 winners in a season, or was there?
It's 18 or 19. Yeah, in 01 and 2011.
Yeah, we had a lot of guys capable of winning races then. So what we do now. So
yeah.
All right, so let's shift gears and let's go to Spa, which is, Richard, one of your favorite racetracks. I know.
Oh yeah,
it's one of my favorite racetracks. It's one of everybody's favorite racetracks that has been, watching European racing for years. It's and again, it's sadly it comes up that it may be in danger of disappearing off the Formula One schedule every now and again. And I think there are a lot of folks that would just hate for that to happen, to make room for another race in the Middle East or in a place like Vegas or something like that, or
some cookie cutter tracks.
Yeah. So, but Spa's a track with character, and we had a couple guys with grid penalties, a couple of really top cars starting.
There was like 6 cars with grid penalties at the end.
Yeah, you might as well. You've had the whole month off. Go ahead and get a fresh engine for the next go. So you had Max starting 14th, I think, and Leclerc starting back there as well.
13th, I think. Yeah, I think Leclerc was the first guy with a penalty, and he was 13th. So that showed you how many guys had penalties.
Yeah. So, but in the race, really, the performance gap between Max Verstappen and his Red Bull car to the other 19 cars in the field is crazy. It's crazy. Max started 14th, and by lap 12, he was leading.
Yeah.
So pretty incredible. I don't know what what kind of development went on during the break, or what
it's
not supposed to be any, but not supposed to be any, but they did use an engine token, put a fresh engine in, and so it was just Max putting on a clinic. So, but Richard, go ahead and let's take it through a little bit, because we had a couple of little rough moments there, especially in lap 1.
Yeah, it was a relatively benign weekend for a Spa weekend. There wasn't much rain kicking around. There was, I think, a little bit on the first day, but the track was pretty dry once they actually got running underway. And the Ferraris just couldn't really match the pace of especially Max Verstappen there. He got pole in sort of air quotes there. But Sainz was elevated to pole once Max had served his grid penalties. But Sainz just wasn't on the races. Leclerc was probably the one guy again that could probably challenge Max, but actually, ironically, at the start of the race, got one of Max Verstappen's visor tear-offs caught in a brake duct, which caused it to overheat, which put him back in the pack for the restart there, and he never really recovered from that. But Max drove a fantastic race. It was almost, dare I say, Schumacher-esque in his way that he carved through the field there. Obviously aided by a superior car, but you've got to do what you've got to do, haven't you? You can't you can't be sort of sympathetic to other guys just because you've got a faster car. A huge amount of credits due there. So, but yeah, the Lecombe chicane curse struck Lewis Hamilton again. That's the fourth time in his career he's been taken out of that corner, and I think he's only retired from like 37 races in his career. So it's a huge 15% of his retirements have come in one corner, which is a crazy statistic, really. Um, but yeah, Alonso had a great qualifying session there, and him and Hamilton got a little bit tangled up, and they had a bit of a petty war of words going on between them. But under the pressure, under the tension of inside the helmet, these things do get said out, and yeah, it is what it is. But no, the star of the day, 10 out of 10 performance there was Max Verstappen. You couldn't ask any more from him. First time since sometime I think in the 50s that a race has been won from a driver starting outside the top 10 two races in a row. So incredible performance there. And Spa is one of those tracks that allows you to win a race from back in the pack. You've got two really good overtaking opportunities. Through La Source and Radion, La Source, Eau Rouge, Radion, that stretch, you pretty much flat out until you get to the chicane at the top of the hill there. And with the aerodynamic efficiency that the Red Bull has, you certainly, saw Max picking off people at will there. And then also into the bus stop chicane coming through Blanchimont there, you're going to, again, just superior confidence on the brakes, and got a number of impressive overtaking maneuvers made there. So if there's any track where you can do it, that's one of them. You saw Lewis do it in Interlagos last year, a similar sort of thing, took an engine penalty and drove through the field in dominant style. So certainly, the tactics were there, and he took advantage of it. But yeah, no, really, really good. Great performance, great performance all around.
Yeah, and it's just seeming more and more likely that he's just going to seal up this championship. I mean, Leclerc had his problems, not only the grid penalty and the tear off, but then he also had a pit lane violation, I believe.
Yeah, I think what happened is when the tear off melted in his brake duct, or caught fire in his brake duct, it melted his wheel speed sensor, which is what they use for pit lane speed limits, or for calculating pit lane speed. So that was a double whammy on him there, and he did lose that point that he'd gained from passing Alonso on the final lap. But I think actually now Perez is now ahead of Charles in the championship there. But I just wanted to touch on Perez a little bit, actually, because we all know that earlier in the year he was awarded, I think it's a multi-year contract with Red Bull. I think it's 2023 and beyond. But ever since he got that contract extension, he has been downright average at best. He started off the season well and had some competitive runs, but since the contract extension was announced, I can't remember which race it was. He's been just way off the pace of Max. I mean, you're picking up podiums and picking up some reasonable results here and there, but never coming anywhere near to the level of Max's performance. So it was almost a little bit like, well, he's put the effort in to get the new contract, and now he's slowed down again, which is a bit disappointing. And I think there's a few people at Red Bull that could be scratching their heads over that one. Now, of course, we reiterate, he has a Red Bull contract. He doesn't have a Red Bull racing contract. So he could be, in theory, put into the, he's still, you could see what happened to Albon and Gasly there, and he gets demoted back to the AlphaTauri team if he doesn't pick up. But certainly, if I was the Red Bull senior management, I'd be asking some pretty serious questions about Checo's performances in the last half dozen races, because they've been below where we expect them to be.
Yeah, you would imagine that with all of Red Bull's resources as well, that they're giving him rather similar equipment to Max.
Oh, for
You know what I
sure.
mean? So
Well, that's part of the problem.
yeah, I really don't think
No,
that Max is getting all the new updates first, or that they're just putting more time into Max's car. I mean, Red Bull has considerable resources to put
yeah.
two very good cars, and just the performance gap between Max and his own teammate, and again, Max and the rest of everybody else in Formula One is
Mhm.
just, it's again, like you said, what do you call it, Schumacher-esque?
It was, the performance
So
was, yeah. But
yeah,
that's maybe
absolutely,
part of
yeah.
the problem that Checker's experiencing here is that, as you say, he gets the same car setup, design, whatever you want to call it, that Max gets. Well, Max is a very, very, very different driver in style to pretty much anybody else on the grid. So, you're almost seeing he's being, it could be detrimental to Checker that he's getting the same stuff. He may want his stuff, his car setup and his car handling, excuse me, that he's not getting. So, just because you're given a car that Max likes doesn't mean that you'll be able to drive in that style. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the guys at Red Bull, the senior guys there, they know the deal, they know what's going on. But yeah, I'd be asking a few questions here or there to tell you the truth. I think yeah, I'd be a little bit disappointed if I were them.
Yeah, so Louise, you want to weigh in on this? I know you're a big fan of Checo, so you want to come to your man's defense, or
I'll give you this, Richard. At the beginning of the year, especially when he won Monaco, there was that one sliver of chance that he might have had a cup of coffee chance of probably in the title mix for Verstappen. But then as June and then July kind of came along, yes, the results have been there to the point that he might have a great chance of holding off second, depending if Ferrari's chicanery come gets the best of them every now and then, which it has been so far. But time will tell, will it continue? And if I were Ferrari, I try to get your grip together and try to challenge Paris to step up his game for that battle for second in the world title.
Yeah,
yeah, I was
yeah,
gonna say a Ferrari is their own worst enemy at times.
Exactly. That's
You
what I
know,
say. If Ferrari step up the game, then hopefully that brings some urgency on Perez because you're not wrong, and that you're not wrong at all. Despite the fact that he's racked up solid results, but you're totally not wrong there. I think if Ferrari get their heads out of their butt, then we'll see. Hopefully, Perez step up his game.
yeah.
yeah. So we had some other pretty good drives through the field there. I thought that Alonso looked as racy as can be.
Oh, yeah.
And he's proven that he hasn't lost a step.
Oh,
As
no.
he's
Despite what Alpine wants to think.
yeah. Well, of course, he's on his way to Austin Martin next year,
Yeah.
so we'll see how
I'll
that
tell you
goes.
who I think
It's
needs.
I feel like that's a step down on the grid, but
Mm,
you never know what the 2023 car is going to be. They could
No, I mean,
Aston Martin could pull something really remarkable out of the books, particularly with a guy like Alonso doing the off-season testing.
yeah.
But
I think
but then
that,
again, Vettel didn't
yeah.
really.
What one guy that certainly I think needs praising for his performance at the weekend was Alex Albon to come home P10 for Williams. He made it through to Q3. Had a strong qualifying performance. Yeah, his grid position was aided by some of these penalties in front of him, but they fundamentally didn't have the pace to finish in the top 10. But they had a car setup that was very skinny, very slippery. Um, even cars behind him with DRS couldn't pass him up. That we were talking about earlier how Max was dominant on that run from Radion to Lecombe. Nobody could get past Albon in the same stretch of track because they just trimmed out that Williams so aggressively. So that's great for that section of the track. It made the handling for the rest of the lap an absolute pig. And Albon's got to be given a huge amount of credit for being able to manage the car through that race and score in reality probably not a valuable point for Williams because the teams above them, the Hasses and the Aston Martins, do seem to have a good clear gap to them. But it's always good for a team like Williams, and it encourages and increases their confidence to check off a few more points there. And
Sure,
yeah, I
and
thought it was a great
I
performance.
think Albon is a much better driver than that Williams allows him to show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think it's
great
showing
drive
up.
for him. Pretty
Yeah,
good
again
drive
showing up.
for Esteban Ocon as well.
Yeah,
he had a good day as well. Yeah.
yeah, and I think unfortunately, for every time you see Albon have a good race, it does highlight, Latifi's shortcomings, and it looks pretty certain that Latifi will be leaving Williams. It also looks pretty certain that Mick Schumacher will be leaving Haas at the end of the year. It was announced today that he won't be renewing his contract and partnership with the Ferrari parent team, for want of a better word. So there's three or four highly coveted seats that are still unavailable, and of course a lot depends on the Oscar Piastri contract dispute. On Monday of this week, there was the contract, the board of contract recognition or whatever they're called. Now, the way this is going to work is Piastri is not going to drive for Alpine next year. Piastri will be driving for McLaren. It's just whether McLaren have to pay Alpine compensation or not. I think that's the only way it's going to work out. I don't think there's going to be a situation where Piastri is forced to drive for Alpine next year. It's just whether he goes to McLaren on a free transfer, or if there has to be a payment from McLaren to Alpine to cover his developmental costs. So you're probably looking at 3 or 4 seats available going into next year, and it's starting to, we could have a whole show just on that topic, I think, but it's going to be interesting to see what plays out over the next few weeks.
Yeah. Of course, the hot rumor is that Alpine is high on Gasly. Gasly is going to be a free agent next year, which would open up the seat at AlphaTauri, and then of course
he does have a contract for next year, though, Gasly, doesn't he?
I thought I had read. I thought I had read that for this. He said this is the first time I control my own fate.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I mean, Gasly's another really good driver too. That should be in a top car. But I don't know if the AlphaTauri to Alpine is a step up or a lateral. You know what I mean? So, but then of course the other thing is
it's kind of it's sort of even level playing field between those two that kind of are on par in my eye.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing with Gasly, if he were to ever make a move out of the Red Bull family, I think that's the big part of it. I think it's you saw with Carlos Sainz, when he left the Red Bull family, he probably grew as a driver a little bit, and he was allowed that independence. Maybe he did the exact opposite of what we saw with Daniel Ricciardo. So it's the drivers make of it what they make of it to get out there. But Gasly does have a contract to drive for AlphaTauri for 2023. But who knows where that falls out in the wash in reality. As we all know in this sport, or in any form of motorsport, contracts are only worth the paper it's written on. And if there was an if McLaren have to pay Alpine $20 million to get Piastri or whatever it may be, then a lot of that would be reinvested in I'm sure, getting something like Gasly out of AlphaTauri. But on the flip side, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly are not particularly good friends, despite being countrymen. So that may be a dynamic that Otmar at Alpine there wouldn't want to sort of ignite a rift within the team. Now, saying that, Esteban Ocon and Mick Schumacher are good friends, so maybe they'd look at Mick Schumacher as a safe pair of hands, if not a amazingly dynamic driver, somebody that could do a job, because there's a lot of talk of Giovinazzi taking Mick's seat, although it's not exactly a sort of a headline driver move there, but who knows?
No.
Yeah,
No,
and
totally
of course, Daniel Ricciardo is still out there and available.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So, but of course, the funny thing for me was that we've seen a couple of articles that are mentioning Colton Herta in conjunction with the AlphaTauri seat, which I'm sorry, I don't see that happening. But
no.
Where there's smoke, there's probably a little fire, so there's probably something to it. But I don't see that as being AlphaTauri's first choice. So, but very interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, you've got the Herta talk to Formula One has been going on for a couple of seasons now, and Richard, to your point, he needs to focus on winning an IndyCar championship first, and I fully agree with you there.
Yeah, I just think that something, I don't think he's done enough personally. I mean, goodness me, he's a damn sight better driver than I am, so I'm not in a position to criticize. But I just don't think he's done enough as of right now to warrant that move. We mentioned pre coming on air here. The one thing that you see with Formula One drivers week in, week out is their consistency. You look at, even though they may not be winning a race, but they're so consistent and they're disciplined. And, how many retirements do you see in a race these days because of wrecks? You know, Colton Herta's almost crashed out through his own mistakes in 3 seasons of IndyCar than Lewis Hamilton has in his own whole career. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but he makes too many mistakes for Formula One. He may be quick, and there's no doubt the kid, when he gets in the zone, is phenomenally fast. But there's more to life, there's more to Formula One than being quick, as we all know. And I just don't think he has that. I may be wrong in saying it, but I just don't think he has that discipline or that drivability to carry the responsibility and the pressure that comes with a Formula One drive.
Right. So now, obviously, now you mentioned Mick Schumacher as well. I mean, I'm afraid this cat might be on the outside looking in next year if the way everything shuffles out.
Yeah.
I really don't feel like he's done enough in that Haas to warrant somebody taking a hard look at him. And the fact that he's going to end his association with Ferrari leaves him really vulnerable to unemployment. You know what I mean? Because I think Ferrari assisted in getting him that Haas seat and keeping him in that Haas seat. But with that association out of the way, it's hard to tell what's going to
Yeah.
happen there. I think he's got decent potential, but you got some really good guys coming up out of Formula Two, and
Yeah.
again, you've got some solid free agents in Formula One. In Formula One, when we talk about Ricardo's and guys like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
gonna be
mean, I think
it's gonna be an interesting off season for sure.
yeah, I think the issue with Mick was not last year, because it was an unknown quantity. Last year he was going against Mazepin, who I think he got the better of, in all fairness. But it was two rookies against each other. It's very difficult to pit them against each other. I think what was massively detrimental to Mick is having had all the preseason testing time and the new car with the new regulations and the team around him and those relationships and that familiarity, to then suddenly have Kevin Magnussen come in at the last minute with only a day or so of testing, preseason testing, and show up Mick pretty aggressively, and in the early part of the season. Now, yeah, Mick did turn around and score a couple of points, or a number of points in Miami. No, sorry, it wasn't Miami. Silverstone and Austria, I think, wasn't it, where he broke his point scoring duck. But it still hasn't been particularly impressive. And if you're, how should we put it? If you're a guy that is going to go into the heir apparent to a Ferrari seat, no disrespect to Kevin Magnussen, but you need to be beating Kevin Magnussen. Kevin Magnussen is a known quantity in Formula One. He is a good high end, middle to high end of the B list drivers, I'll put him. He's not a superstar, he's not a world champion, he's not a multiple race winner. Give him the right car, and he may, stick it up there on a regular basis. But he's and again, a Sergio Perez level driver, a Valtteri Bottas level driver, a good number two in a big team. And Mick can't really come close to him on a regular basis. So I think that's been Mick's undoing. I think if Mazepin had stayed on, I think Mick's stock would be a little bit higher than it is now, potentially.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, Magnuson is a really good measuring stick to see where your performance at, as
And he
opposed to
didn't measure very well.
Mazepin. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there you
and
go. It'll be
Magnussen is your other Hulkenberg, where if you can hang toe to toe with those guys, you may make it if you're a young driver.
Yeah.
Right.
They're
Right.
all good yardsticks for Formula One teams. They're a good, solid driver who'll do a job, get your car out there, not do anything crazy. And yeah, but they're not particularly. It's it's a difficult word to use. Really. They're not a sexy driver, if you know what I mean. They're not somebody you go, oh, let's watch Magnussen, or oh, let's watch Hulkenberg. It's like, okay, yeah, cool, did a good job.
Yeah, they're not Max Verstappen.
No, they're not on edge of
Exactly.
your seat. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, all right. So, where are we off to next?
We are off to the Netherlands at Zandvoort this weekend to Max's playground, who no doubt he will obliterate the opposition again here this weekend,
And
and
he'll have his
there'll be
army.
lots of
Yep.
Yeah,
orange army and orange smoke everywhere, and
yeah. You
yeah, I
got
mean
beach
the
sand,
guys.
high banks to say for
Oh
barriers.
yeah, yeah. No, it's great. I mean, Max pretty much has three home races. I mean, Austria obviously with the Red Bull link, they go crazy for him. Spa, not a million miles. Belgium's not a million miles away from Holland, and then of course, then he goes to Zandvoort, which is his home race. I mean, it's it's crazy, really. He's in the same way that Alonso effect and the Schumacher effect, had a huge impact on motorsport in Germany and Spain, respectively, in the early 2000s and late 90s. Max is obviously doing the same around the sort of that Netherlands and Belgium and places like that. Having a huge impact on the sport.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, all right. So, it's hard to pick anyone other than Max for that race.
Yep.
So we can just all pick Max.
I think we're all going to pick Max on that one, unless Louise,
Yeah.
you've got a different.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be Max. I don't if
Yeah.
like I said, I made my point. I kind of alluded to how I feel about Ferrari. They need to get their heads out of their butts.
I mean, the problem is when you're not, you know, Red Bull have that little bit in reserve, and they can then use that energy to concentrate on strategy and making the right calls at the right time. I don't feel Ferrari has that reserve. I think when you see Ferrari being fast, it's on the edge of their seats. They're really opening every faucet to get that performance out of the car. And I think with Red Bull, they're not having to push themselves. They're running at 80% capacity on their race engineering and structure of their team. So that relieves them another 20% to fall back on making sensible strategy calls and understanding the strategy plays that are on the table. I think Ferrari are too stretched because they're trying to eke out every last ounce of performance from their car. So I think it's difficult to say that Ferrari's own doing and they're making silly mistakes. I just think that they're under pressure more so than Red Bull are because they're so stretched.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those, and I feel like it's one of those that they know they can hang toe to toe, and they could be as every bit as good or even better than them. It's just they like you're saying they're stretching themselves that where they focus on one
Yeah,
thing, not on the other
exactly.
necessities.
Yeah,
To
exactly.
similar to a minor extent McLaren in '05
Yeah, I
with
mean the
Raikkonen.
way ever since I started in racing, I've always been I was told very early that, and this is a very simplistic way of looking at it. But if there's 10 things that you need to get right to win a race, whether it's Formula One, NASCAR, IndyCar, MotoGP, whatever it is, there's 10 things you need to get right every weekend to win a race. The top teams, the Red Bull, they'll have 7 or 8 of those things right every week without hesitation. Hendrick, Joe Gibbs will get 7 or 8 of those things right every weekend. So they can concentrate their energy on the 2 or 3 things that maybe you can't predict. Ferrari at the moment, I think, are getting 5 or 6 of those things right every weekend. And that's leaving them more work to do and putting more pressure on them. But then you have races like Austria where Charles was dominant during the race. It just clicked for him. But then, of course, he made that mistake in Paul Ricard and lost that race heavily. And then Hungary and Spa, not picking up, particularly good points haul. It really does put you on the back foot there.
Certainly does. So we've got a few minutes left. I do want to turn our attention to IndyCar. IndyCar is heading into their last 2 races of the season. We're going to be in Portland, and then following Portland will be at Laguna Seca for the finale. Now, Louise, you were out there in Portland viewing some testing. So some of the teams, I think Andretti and Penske were testing in Portland, and the Ganassi and McLaren teams were testing in Laguna, and some other guys were out there testing as well. I just don't know who was where on the top of my head, other than
Foyt went to
those.
Portland. That's the other team that. So yeah, it's Penske, Foyt, and Andretti
And
that
where
were
we're
at
at,
Portland.
right? So, and we
I thought
saw.
there was an Andretti car at Laguna. Sure, I saw an Andretti car on
Uh,
the
uh,
timesheets. I may be
hmm.
wrong in that.
I don't
Who
know. I,
knows?
I
Because
didn't.
sometimes test times and data are not distributed that
This was
quickly, like Indianapolis or Sebring.
Yeah, I do know that. I guess Ericsson had a pretty good shunt at in Laguna, and Palou was fastest, I believe, of that group there,
yeah.
and then in Portland, I think you said Grosjean had a bit of an
Yeah.
off track excursion, and as well as Will Power.
Yeah, Willpower was spun in turn 6 and then tried to get fired up, but it stalled. He got back going. Grosjean, towards the end of the first half of the morning portion of testing, he bended where he had suspension damage and all of that in the final corner, from what I was told. And then Kellett also had an off-road excursion that brought up a. There were 3 stoppages during the time I was there where the media were allowed to be around the content wise. But those were the 3 that I picked up. And as far as Penske going for Portland, I think it's more or less kind of boiled down to get better at a track that where they kind of struggled last year. Because remember, yes, Willpower won in 2019, but between 2019 and 2021, it was Ganassi's turf, and a year ago with Palou winning there, and remains his last win in IndyCar to date. So he's pushing on a year. Well, I went so that Penske felt like if they're going to focus, they had to pick and choose, because as we talked off air with a couple of people, that it's kind of like you pick and choose. Like you only have a certain amount of test dates you could do it throughout the IndyCar year, and we're down to Portland and Laguna Seca, which both West Coast tracks, and it's kind of like pick and choose. Penske went with Portland because they want to get better at that track, whereas Ganassi went with Laguna Seca to kind of see which ones will benefit, which is going to be very interesting and an exciting final 2 rounds. See which decision making they made for testing will benefit more,
Yeah,
because
and again,
ultimately it's now 2 teams for the title with 6 drivers in it.
yes, absolutely, yeah. So, like I said, we are up against the clock here. So, who do you like for Portland? I mean, I think it's tough to bet against the Ganassis of Portland, but you got to look at when Newgarden gets into that championship mode, and plus Power has been so consistent this year. It's hard for me to just kind of there's several guys that could win there. I mean, Dixon could win at Portland. That's a track that favors Dixon rather well. And again, here we are getting close to the championship season ender. So who do you like, Louise?
Yeah. You have a good point on Dixon. The livery won last year, not Dixon though, which is people tend to forget that. But I actually like Rossi in this one, mostly for the fact that he's been on the podium a couple times. I feel like he's gotten it a little bit better. I think if anything, he wants to end it on a positive note with Andretti before he makes the jump to McLaren. So I'm gonna go with a bold prediction with Rossi on that one over Will Power.
Yeah, see the other thing there, yeah, you got to figure these guys in the championship battle may if they've got a good podium position, they might not fight hard for the lead if they feel like they're going to have a good points day. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, I mean, it's the battle at the top is so tight. If you don't go for the win,
Yeah, you gotta go
yeah,
for it
you got to go for
regardless.
the win. Yeah, so
Above everything else, survive turn 1, lap 1. Period.
that's the crapshoot at Portland. Yeah, that festival curve there. For the life of me, I always say they should skip it on lap 1 till the field strings out. Let the field string out after one lap, and then go and add it in. But nobody listens to me.
No.
That was a talk at testing. What should they do about it? Some said make it a little
Don't
bit
hit
longer in
each
track
other.
lane. And
Don't hit each other. That's what you do. God, these are some of the best drivers in the world. I hate this. The track is there. They know it's there. Don't hit each other. It's
it's happened only on lap 1, and then the restarts, everything's all mellow out with a single flop, but they want to go all 8 wide bananas.
Because that's what race car drivers do.
Yeah, exactly.
The track's there. There's these 2 white lines either side of the black bit in the middle, and a car's a set width. It's not changing width in the middle of the corner. Just be smart about it. And if you don't want to go for the gap, don't go for the gap. I think it's a ridiculous argument about taking it out for the first lap of the race. No, just they've got to be disciplined. These guys are good and act good. Don't be stupid about it, guys. Come on.
Okay. All right. I see.
On that note,
Richard,
Yes.
Richard, who do you like for Portland?
Oh, I'm going to say there's a huge pile up in the first corner. And
so Johnson wins it.
Grosjean wins it.
Grosjean wins it. Okay. I'm going to go with I'm going to say number 1. Will Power goes ahead and breaks that pole record, gets pole and gets number 68 and puts Mario down to number 2. I'm going to say Will gets a podium out of it, retains the points lead, and Pato O'Ward wins the race. That's what that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So until next week, we'll let you know how that first corner pileup shakes out. But I want to thank you, Richard and Louise. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank iHeartRadio, Spreaker, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. And I want to thank you folks that listen to us every week. But until next week, have a good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com. Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.